Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our podcast. We're so happy to have you here with us today. I'm Agnes, and with me is my amazing co-host, Jasper.
Hey, everyone, it's great to be here, and I'm excited about today's topic. I think it's something that's going to be really useful for everyone listening. So, Agnes, what's on the agenda today?
Well, Jasper, today we're diving into a subject that's not only important for English learners, but for anyone trying to expand their vocabulary in any language. We're talking about how to learn new words and memorize them day by day. Now, think about this: learning new words is like building the foundation of a house. Without it, you can't go very far in your language learning journey.
Exactly. Words are literally the building blocks of communication. If you think about it, every conversation, every sentence starts with words. And it's not just about knowing a lot of them, it's about remembering them and being able to use them naturally in daily life. That's where the challenge really lies, right?
Yes. Knowing a word, but forgetting it just as quickly as you learn it is something we all struggle with, especially when learning a new language. And it can be frustrating, but today, we're going to talk about some techniques and strategies that can help you not only learn new words, but also keep them in your memory so you can use them whenever you need to. And I want to emphasize just how important this is. For advanced learners, expanding your vocabulary is key to moving from just being able to get by in a conversation to actually sounding fluent and natural. It's the difference between understanding what someone says and being able to express exactly what you want to say in return.
That's such a good point, Agnes. Once you start building a stronger vocabulary, your confidence grows, and you start feeling more comfortable speaking. You're not searching for words as much, and you're able to express yourself more clearly. But here's the real question: how do we learn new words and actually remember them?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer, well, it's not as simple as just writing them down a few times. Learning new words and memorizing them requires a bit of strategy. It's not just about seeing the word once or twice, it's about engaging with it multiple times in different ways.
Absolutely. One of the things I always suggest is using the new word in context as soon as possible. For example, if you've just learned the word remarkable, try using it in a sentence right away. That was a remarkable performance. The more you use a word in sentences that relate to your own life, the easier it becomes to remember.
Yes, and speaking of context, one powerful technique is what we call contextual learning. This means learning words not in isolation, but as part of phrases or sentences. When you learn a word in context, your brain is more likely to remember it because it's linked to a specific situation or meaning. For example, instead of just memorizing the word achieve, learn it with other words around it. Achieve a goal, achieve success. That way, when you think of achieve, your mind will automatically connect it with phrases you can use in real life.
That's so true, Agnes. And that brings me to another method: repetition. It's really the key to making sure those new words stick. But here's the thing: it's not just about repeating the word over and over. It's about spaced repetition, which means reviewing the word at intervals over time. So instead of looking at the word 5 times in one day, spread it out. Maybe review it once today, then again tomorrow, and then a few days later. This kind of repetition helps move the word from short-term to long-term memory.
Exactly. Our brains need time to absorb and retain information, and spaced repetition takes advantage of that natural process. And here's where technology can help. There are some great apps out there, like Anki or Quizlet, that use spaced repetition techniques to help you review new words at the right intervals. Another thing that really helps with memory is associating new words with images or emotions. When you link a word to something visual or something that has an emotional impact on you, your brain is much more likely to hold on to the information.
Oh, I love that idea making connections. If you can attach a word to a picture in your mind or even a personal experience, it sticks so much better. For instance, if you learn the word serene, think of a place where you felt calm, like sitting by the ocean or in a peaceful park. That emotional connection helps your brain remember the word.
Exactly. And we can also talk about mnemonics here, which are memory aids. You can create little stories or associations to help you remember new words. Let's say you're learning the word ambitious. You might picture someone climbing a tall mountain to represent their ambitious goals. The brain loves stories, and these visual or imaginative connections really make the word stick.
That's a great trick, and I think this is also where creativity comes in. Learning new words doesn't have to be boring or tedious. You can play around with it. For example, you can write short stories or poems using the new words you've learned. Or, even better, talk to someone about your day and consciously try to use the new words you're working on.
That's such a fun way to practice, and it really reinforces the idea that learning new words should be an active process, not a passive one. If you're just reading lists of words or staring at flashcards without engaging your brain in a meaningful way, it's going to be a lot harder to remember them.
Exactly. And another thing I want to mention is reviewing words in different situations. This means practicing the words not just in one context, but in multiple scenarios. So let's say you learned the word perspective. You could use it in a sentence about art. The painting offers an interesting perspective on reality. Then, use it in a conversation about opinions. From my perspective, this solution makes the most sense. The more varied the situations you use the word in, the stronger your memory of it will be.
Yes, and I think that brings us to another key point: consistency. Learning new words day by day isn't about cramming hundreds of words in a short time and hoping they'll stick. It's about a steady, daily commitment to building your vocabulary over time. Even learning just one new word a day can add up to 365 new words in a year.
Exactly, and that's so achievable if you think about it. Just one word a day. But the important thing is to stay consistent. Make learning new words part of your routine. Maybe you review a few words in the morning with your coffee, or before bed. The key is to find a time that works for you and stick with it.
Yes, consistency really is everything. And it's also important to enjoy the process. Learning new words can be exciting. Each new word opens up more possibilities for understanding and communication. And it's not just about English, it's about being able to express yourself more fully, to communicate more deeply with others.
Absolutely, Agnes. The more words you know, the more you can express yourself and understand the world around you. And the more you use those words, the more confident you become in your ability to communicate effectively.
Confidence is key. The more words you learn and memorize, the more confident you'll feel in conversations, whether it's in casual chats or professional settings. And the great thing is, as you build your vocabulary, you'll also start to notice patterns in language, which makes learning even easier.
Exactly. Once you start recognizing those patterns, it's like unlocking the secret code to the language. You'll find that you can guess the meaning of new words based on words you already know, and that makes the whole process even more fun.
Absolutely. And the journey doesn't end here. There's always more to learn, more words to discover, and more ways to express yourself. Every word you add to your vocabulary is like adding a new tool to your toolbox that helps you communicate more clearly and connect with people in a deeper way.
Well said, Agnes. And that's why learning new words is so powerful. It's not just about memorizing lists, it's about expanding your ability to connect with the world. And who doesn't want that?
Exactly. So, everyone listening, stay tuned because we're going to dive even deeper into this in a moment. Keep that curiosity alive, and let's continue building our vocabulary one step at a time.
Right. So as Agnes just mentioned, learning new words is about more than just memorization. It's about expanding how you connect with the world. And that's something we want to continue focusing on. Now, let's talk about some additional strategies that can help you make these new words a part of your active vocabulary. Not just something you recognize, but something you use confidently. One of the techniques I love to use is what we call active recall. This is where you don't just passively review words, but actively try to remember them without looking at the answers. Let's say you've been learning a list of new vocabulary words. Instead of just staring at the list over and over, try to test yourself. Cover the definitions and see if you can recall the meaning of each word. By forcing your brain to work harder, you're strengthening those memory connections.
Oh, yes, active recall is such a powerful tool. When we're just reading or listening, we're in a passive mode of learning. But when we engage in active recall, it's like we're flexing our mental muscles. And the more we do it, the stronger our memory becomes. I'd like to add another idea here, teaching the words to someone else. If you've ever tried explaining a concept to someone, you know that it forces you to really understand it yourself. So, if you've just learned some new words, try teaching them to a friend or even explaining them out loud to yourself. It may sound funny, but teaching something is one of the best ways to make sure it sticks in your memory.
That's such a great point, Agnes. I've found that explaining things to others really makes me realize how well I understand something or where I need to improve. And it doesn't have to be a formal teaching session. Even if you're talking to yourself or writing a blog post or journal entry using your new vocabulary, it's a way of reinforcing the words. Another method that's worth mentioning is personalization. When you personalize a word, you make it relevant to your life. Let's take a word like accomplishment. Instead of just memorizing the meaning of the word, think of a moment in your life when you felt a sense of accomplishment. Was it graduating from school? Learning to cook your favorite dish? When you tie a word to a personal memory, it becomes more meaningful and, therefore, easier to remember.
Exactly. And I love that you brought up personalization because it really taps into the emotional side of learning. When a word feels personal, it becomes part of your experience. And we tend to remember experiences much better than isolated bits of information. In fact, studies show that the more emotion we attach to a memory, the stronger that memory becomes. So, when you're learning new words, try to associate them with something that sparks emotion, whether it's a personal achievement, a favorite hobby, or even something that frustrates you. The point is to make the word feel real in your life.
Exactly. And here's another idea that's especially useful for advanced learners: learning words in word families. So, instead of just learning the word successful, for example, learn related words like success, succeed, unsuccessful. This helps you understand how different forms of a word are used in different contexts. It also means you're expanding your vocabulary faster because you're learning a cluster of related words instead of just one at a time.
That's a fantastic technique. Learning words in families helps you see the connections between them and understand how they function in different contexts. It also makes it easier to guess the meanings of unfamiliar words when you encounter them in the future. And here's something else that can really help: immersion. Immersing yourself in the language as much as possible is one of the best ways to naturally absorb new vocabulary. This doesn't mean you have to move to an English-speaking country, but you can create an immersive environment for yourself by surrounding yourself with English. Watch English movies, listen to podcasts, read books, and try to interact with native speakers as much as possible.
Yes, immersion is key. The more you expose yourself to the language, the more you'll pick up on subtle nuances and natural ways of using words. It's not just about memorizing definitions, but about understanding how words are used in everyday conversation. You'll start to hear certain phrases repeated, and that's when you can begin to incorporate them into your own speech. One thing I always tell learners is that they should focus on using the new words they learn. It's not enough to recognize a word. When you see it, you have to actually practice using it in your own conversations or writing. The more you use a word, the more it becomes a part of your active vocabulary, and soon, you won't even have to think about it, it'll just come naturally.
And that's the goal, right? To make these words a natural part of your everyday communication. It might feel awkward at first, but the more you practice, the more confident you'll become. And remember, mistakes are part of the learning process. Don't be afraid to use new words, even if you're not 100% sure how to use them at first. The more you try, the faster you'll improve.
That's such good advice. Learning a language is all about stepping out of your comfort zone, and sometimes that means making mistakes. But those mistakes are how you learn and grow. Every time you use a new word, you're reinforcing it in your brain and bringing yourself one step closer to fluency. So, just to recap some of the key strategies we've talked about so far: active recall, contextual learning, personalization, spaced repetition, teaching others, and immersion. These are all powerful tools you can use to build and retain a strong vocabulary.
And let's not forget the importance of having fun with the process. Learning new words doesn't have to be a chore. You can make it enjoyable by playing word games, watching shows you love in English, or even challenging yourself to learn a word that's totally new and interesting each day. When you find joy in learning, it stops feeling like work and starts feeling like a rewarding part of your day.
Exactly, Agnes. The more enjoyable and engaging the process is, the more motivated you'll be to keep going. And with each new word you learn, you're opening up new opportunities for expression and understanding. It's such a powerful thing to be able to communicate in a new language.
Now, let's dive deeper into something that we often overlook when learning new words: context. While memorizing individual words is useful, understanding how and when to use those words in a sentence or conversation is even more critical. You see, words don't exist in isolation. They're part of a bigger picture, and how they fit into that picture changes depending on the situation. Take the word set, for example. It's a simple 3-letter word, but did you know it has over 400 different meanings in English? That's why learning words through context is so important. When you come across a new word, don't just focus on the word itself. Look at the sentence it's in. What are the words around it? What is the tone of the sentence? Is it formal or casual? These details help you understand the full range of how a word can be used.
Exactly, context is everything. And the great thing about learning words through context is that it makes the process much more natural. Instead of just memorizing a definition, you're seeing how that word functions in real life, in a real conversation or a real piece of writing. A good exercise for this is to read articles, books, or even watch movies in English. And whenever you come across a new word, pay attention to how it's used. Is it describing something, giving an instruction, expressing an opinion? When you study vocabulary this way, you're training your brain to not only remember the word, but also understand its purpose in communication.
That's so true. And I think one of the best ways to incorporate this into your learning routine is by reading. Reading is one of the most effective ways to expand your vocabulary because it gives you the chance to see words in action. You get to witness how different authors or speakers use language in different ways, and this broadens your understanding of words. For instance, if you're reading a novel, you might notice that certain words are used to create atmosphere or emotion. In an article, you'll see words used to inform or persuade. All of these contexts offer valuable lessons for how you can use new words effectively in your own conversations and writing.
Exactly. Reading exposes you to different styles of language as well. You'll notice that the vocabulary used in a news article is different from the words used in a casual blog post or in dialogue in a movie. By exposing yourself to a variety of styles, you'll start to notice the nuances of word usage, which will improve your language intuition. And the best part is, reading is something you can do at your own pace. You don't have to rush, it's about enjoying the process. On that note, let's talk a little about how reviewing words you've already learned fits into this. We've mentioned spaced repetition, but I'd like to highlight that reviewing doesn't have to be repetitive or boring. It can actually be a creative process. For example, you can write short stories using the new words you've learned, or even rewrite a passage from something you've read in your own words, making sure to use the vocabulary you're trying to master.
I love that idea, Jasper. Writing your own sentences or stories with new words is such a creative way to reinforce them. It's much more engaging than just staring at a list of words and definitions. Plus, it forces you to think critically about how to use the words correctly. And let's not forget speaking. This is a big one. If you're learning English, using your new vocabulary in conversations is essential. It might feel challenging at first, but the more you practice, the more natural it will become. Don't be afraid to use your new words, even if you're not sure if you're using them perfectly. The more you use them, the better you'll get at it.
Yes, speaking is probably one of the most effective ways to lock those words into your active vocabulary. And here's a great exercise to try. After you've learned a few new words, have a conversation with yourself or with a friend where you deliberately try to use those words. It might feel awkward at first, but it's a fantastic way to build confidence and reinforce what you've learned. Another trick is to associate new words with something familiar. If you've just learned a word like optimistic, you could think about a friend or family member who has an optimistic attitude. Every time you think of that person, the word will come to mind. Making these kinds of personal connections makes it easier to remember vocabulary long-term.
That's such a helpful approach. Associating words with personal experiences or people you know creates a mental image that's much stronger than just memorizing the word on its own. And when you relate a word to something familiar, it becomes part of your long-term memory rather than something you forget after a few days. Another thing we should mention is the importance of patience. Learning new words and any language skill really takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. You might learn a word today, and it could take a few weeks or even months before you feel completely comfortable using it. That's okay. The key is consistency. Keep practicing, keep exposing yourself to the language, and trust that over time, the words will stick.
Yes, patience is everything. It's easy to get discouraged if you don't feel like you're improving as quickly as you'd like, but language learning is a journey. Every word you learn is a step forward, even if it doesn't feel like it right away. And here's the beautiful part. As you build your vocabulary, you'll also be building your confidence. You'll start to notice that you understand more in conversations, that you can express yourself more clearly, and that you're more comfortable in English-speaking environments. That's what makes all the effort worth it.
Absolutely. The satisfaction of being able to use your new words in real-life situations is one of the most rewarding aspects of learning a language. So, to all our listeners, remember, the journey to building a rich vocabulary is ongoing, but every small effort you make will take you closer to your goal. Be patient with yourself, enjoy the process, and celebrate each new word you master.
Well said, Agnes. And with that, we'd like to wish everyone listening the best of luck in their language learning journey. Stay curious, keep practicing, and don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Learning new words and mastering a language is one of the most empowering things you can do.
It really is. So thank you all for joining us today. We hope this conversation has been helpful and encouraging as you continue to expand your vocabulary. Remember, every word you learn opens up new possibilities. Keep going, and we'll be here cheering you on.
Take care, everyone, and best of luck with your English learning journey.
Goodbye for now.